All right, this video is on kind of a sad, depressing topic that we do have to talk about if we're going to give a thorough education about human development. And so we have to talk about sudden infant death syndrome, or SIDS. This was once called crib death. If you hear that term, that's we're talking about the same thing. And so with SIDS, you have an infant that doesn't have any underlying health condition, a seemingly healthy infant. They go to sleep and they do not wake up. They die in their sleep. And we don't find, some specific cause. This is a largely unexplained death. Now, so the thing about SIDS, we don't know the exact cause, but we're doing more research and we're learning more about risk factors. And we're starting to get ideas in terms of what part of the brain might lead to vulnerabilities. So we're learning more about this. Now, one thing that you may be familiar with is that we put babies to sleep on we recommend that you put babies to sleep on their back now. That wasn't always the case. Back in the middle of the 20th century, the most popular baby care advice book actually explicitly said, put babies to sleep on their belly. That's where they're comfortable. That's where they prefer it. And if you ever are around an infant trying to get them to sleep, yeah, they would prefer to be on their belly. They like the pressure against their belly. The belly position, it's got similar effects as swaddling, which I've mentioned in a previous video. It's comforting, all right? But we know from research that babies who sleep on their bellies have a higher risk for SIDS than babies who sleep on their backs, and side sleepers are in between the two. Now, so this is correlational evidence, all right? So correlation does not equal causation. We can't say that sleeping on your belly makes you have SIDS, all right? We can't say that. But because of that evidence, in the 90s, we started this big campaign, this back to sleep campaign. You would go to any place where children were, like pediatrician office or something, you would see these big posters that say back to sleep. It's now pretty standard. Daycares, if you're going to run a daycare, the policies, the procedures are that you put the infants of a certain age on their backs for sleep. All right. Back sleeping has safety advantages, but the babies don't necessarily like it. Now, swaddling helps. Being swaddled and put to sleep on the back, that definitely does, it helps. It's easier to get a baby to sleep on their back if they are swaddled. And then some babies do have health conditions where they can't sleep on their back. Just one example is severe reflux. Where they kind of burp up stomach acid. Their pediatrician, their doctor, any medical professional in their care, they might say, okay, this baby, they can't sleep on their back. That's not going to be comfortable for them. That's not going to work. And so we put the babies to sleep on their back. It is harder. So sometimes there's resistance from parents and from caregivers. They say, but they'd rather sleep on their stomach. But because of that evidence, we say, yes, let's please put them to sleep on their back. Other than back sleeping, all right, we know that back sleeping is not the full picture. Back sleeping does not guarantee that a baby will not succumb to SIDS. There are other risk factors too that are supported. Airflow seems to be very important. All right, so you don't want a baby to sleep in a stuffy room, and we see if there's a fan in the room. We do have at least a little bit of evidence that there's this correlational evidence that having a fan in the room is associated with lower risk for SIDS. And so we suspect, that we don't know exactly why, but that could be because of airflow. Another related thing that has to do with airflow is pacifier usage. And this, a lot of people, they're like, whoa, I thought pacifiers were bad, because I know in our culture, especially where I'm living, there's this huge anti-pacifier attitude. Get that pacifier out of that baby's mouth. They're going to be addicted to it. All right, but pacifiers before age 6 months are actually recommended by childhood medical professional scientists. Before 6 months. Before 6 months, pacifiers have advantages. They are soothing, they are comforting, and babies who go to sleep with a pacifier, they have reduced risk of SIDS. All right, we don't know why, but they do. And so definitely don't disparage the pacifier before 6 months. And one thing about SIDS is, when is the risk highest? Around 3 to 4 months, that's when you have this peak risk for SIDS. So this is a younger than 6 months concern. I mean, this is where you see more of it and you really are concerned about it. And so pacifier usage seems to be a good thing. Now, not all babies like pacifiers. All right, both of my kids, they didn't really care for the pacifiers. Some kids really like them. If they like them, let them sleep with it. Now, should you let them go to sleep with a bottle? A bottle has a nipple on it. Isn't it just like a pacifier? No, because two horrible things can happen. First of all, the milk can pool, and not only can that erode at their developing teeth, it can also choke them. And then also the bottle nipple could pop off. It's not made the same as a pacifier nipple, and it could choke them. So definitely no bottles. Don't put them to bed with a bottle. There are definite safety concerns with that. All right, but pacifier is good. All right, what else? All right, you don't want stuff in the bed with the baby. All right, so stuffed animals, no. Before age 1, no stuffed animals in the bed with them. Pillow, well, you already know we like pillows. Babies don't care. They don't need that pillow. Get that pillow out of the bed. Another kind of annoying thing for medical professionals who focus on this is a lot of crib bedding sets. Like you go to the store and you buy a bedding set for a crib. A lot of times it comes with these things called bumpers. They're like these cushion things that you put around the crib so you like it's supposed to like keep them from hitting their heads on the slats or sticking their fingers and hands through the slats. They can get tangled up in the bumpers, and that is a complicating factor with SIDS. So don't put the bumpers in the bed. Use it for something else. Give it to a dog or something. Don't put it in the bed. Otherwise, what should be in the bed? If it's a crib or a co-sleeper bed, mattress, fitted sheet, baby. That's it. Well, you might be thinking, well, what if it's cold? It does get cold. We need blankets, right? I went to a baby shower and everybody was giving fancy blankets, embroidered blankets. No blankets. When they are out of the crib and you're carrying them around, wrap them around in that blanket. Don't put them to sleep with the blanket. All right. If it is cold, put them in a sleeper, a onesie. You know, when I say sleeper, that's the one that's long sleeves with the footy jammies. You know what I'm talking about, right? If it's exceptionally cold, multiple layers, like put an extra t-shirt underneath. But do that. Put extra layers rather than putting the blanket on the baby. And you might be thinking, why are we trying to keep all this stuff out of the baby's bed? Well, we do think that SIDS may or likely have something to do with having a situation where you're not getting enough airflow. And so if you get tangled up in this stuff, or you get under this stuff, it gets over your face in some way, or if you roll to your stomach and your face is in the mattress, all of these can lead to a situation where you have restricted airflow. And babies who are vulnerable to SIDS, they may not be able to handle that situation well, to get them out of that position. This is why babies who can't roll over on their own yet are at a heightened risk for SIDS. And that might be because if they end up in this crisis situation, they can't get their head out of that position where they're not getting the air. These are just ideas, all right? So this is just what we think is going on. We also do see that babies who are at heightened risk for SIDS, we do have correlational data for things like low birth weight. We think also the brain stem. Previously when we talked about the brain, we talked about the cortex, so this top part of the brain, but there's this part in the back. The brain stem is associated with like survival functions, and we think that there may be dysfunction of the brainstem or vulnerability in the brainstem for some babies that put them at risk for these situations where they might succumb to SIDS because they end up in a situation where breathing is restricted and they're already vulnerable because they have brainstem problems. All right, so you know these factors probably all come together to lead to these unfortunate situations. Now, what else? Oh, breastfeeding. There is a correlation with babies who are breastfed having lower risk for SIDS. I worry about giving that statistic because some people hear that and they're like, oh, I breastfeed, my baby will never get SIDS. That's not what those numbers say, but there is that correlation there. Please don't think that you don't have to do any of the other stuff if your baby is breastfed. Let's make sure that I have, okay, I knew I was forgetting something important. All right. Bed sharing, co-sleeping. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? That's a big, it depends. In terms of SID prevention, rather than having the baby in the same bed as the caregivers, it's a better idea to have them in the same room or in a bed right next to, because you don't want a situation where you roll over on them or they end up, sliding under, part of your body or something like that. And especially any kind of bed sharing, no substance use. No drinking before bed if you're sharing a bed with an infant or a child, because research definitely shows that is a huge risk factor. No substance use before bed if you're bed sharing. All right, so now they do make beds, co-sleeper beds, where the bed, it's a separate bed, but it attaches to the bed, so you can have the advantages of co-sleeping. Like if you're breastfeeding, you can just kind of roll over or reach for, you can get them very quick without having to walk to a separate room. It is comforting for the infant to have you in the same room with them, but it's a general recommendation, try not to have them, at least at first, at least when they are very young and vulnerable, not having them in the same bed with you, but you can have them right, they can be in a crib or a co-sleeper bed right next to your bed, and you can get those advantages without worrying about SIDS risk. All right, so SIDS is complicated. We don't fully understand SIDS yet. We're learning more, all right? But with all of this knowledge of risk factors, we can try to take precautions. We do what we can to try to at least remove anything that could possibly provide a danger to these young infants. Now, one important thing I do want to mention, I mentioned, the sleeping position issue, and I mentioned that swaddling can help. Swaddling can help with back sleeping. As soon as an infant achieves the motor milestone of being able to roll over on their own, they can roll, they can go from their back to their stomach to their back. Once they can do any kind of rolling, you cannot swaddle them. Swaddling is only safe before they can roll over on their own. All right, so I do want to make sure that I put that one in there, because that is an important issue. All right, so that's what we know about SIDS so far. I am going to link to at least one additional video in the description, because it is complicated enough. It helps to see this from different perspectives.